At 11:15 on the morning of April 9th, 1944, Lieutenant Commander George Castleman stands on the bridge. He watches the Atlantic horizon from the USS Pillsbury. A German submarine suddenly breaks the surface nearby. U-boat is only 700 yards away. It sits precariously off the ship's starboard bow. Castleman has spent 10 months hunting these ghosts. He has seen many attacks, but 0 successful captures. The submarine is identified as the deadly U-515. It is commanded by Werner Henk, a famous German ace. Henk has already sunk 25 Allied vessels. He is a man responsible for immense loss of life. In December 1942, he torpedoed the ship Ceramic. Over 600 people drowned in that frozen tragedy. But now, the hunter has finally become the prey. The U-515 is crippled and forced to the surface. Hours of depth charging have shattered the boat's systems. The Pillsbury and her sister ships have been relentless. The German crew scrambles out onto the narrow deck. Some move to the guns, while others leap into the sea. The Pillsbury opens fire with her deck guns. The USS Flaherty joins the barrage against the sub. Machine guns rake the steel of the conning tower. Rockets from overhead aircraft streak across the water. Within minutes, the U-515 tilts toward the sky. She slides backward into the depths and vanishes. 44 German sailors are pulled from the waves. Is among them, now a prisoner of the Navy. The task group celebrates the sinking of the enemy. By every standard, the mission is a complete success. But Captain Daniel Gallery sees a missed opportunity. He watched the U-boat float for 10 long minutes. In those 10 minutes, the sub was ripe for boarding. Gallery realizes his ships were only trained to kill. They did exactly what they were instructed to do. They missed the chance to capture a secret treasure. A captured U-boat would offer incredible intelligence. Codebooks and Enigma machines could be seized intact. The Allies could finally read the enemy's secret mail. Gallery decides that next time, they will be ready. No American ship had captured a vessel since 1815. The art of boarding had been forgotten for a century. The Navy had no protocols or training for such a task. Gallery begins to draft a plan to change everything. The problem of capturing a U-boat is immense. German crews are trained to scuttle their boats instantly. They open sea valves and set powerful demolition charges. They would rather sink than let secrets reach the Allies. Even reaching the deck is a massive tactical risk. The sailors would be boarding a sinking, rigged ship. The Germans are known for their fanatical dedication. The statistics of the Atlantic War are dark and brutal. In 1943, 300 merchant ships were sunk. Destroyer escorts lived by a simple, violent equation. Destroy the submarine before it destroys your own ship. There is no room for error or second-guessing. Every second a U-boat floats is a second of danger. It could fire a final torpedo at any given moment. The Pillsbury was built to hunt and kill, not to save. But Gallery issues a bold order to all his captains. Every ship in the task group must form a party. They must train for a boarding action at sea. They will attempt what has not been done in years. The crew of the Pillsbury begins their transformation. The task group returns to Norfolk in late April. Castleman assembles his best men for a secret talk. He tells them they are going to board a submarine. They have 6 weeks to master an impossible mission. On May 15, 1944, the Pillsbury sails once more. Official orders listed as a routine anti-sub patrol. But Gallery has secret orders from the highest levels. The goal is to bring a German U-boat back alive. The boarding party consists of 8 brave men. Lieutenant Junior Grade Albert David is the leader. He is a 41-year-old veteran of the fleet, rose through the ranks over 25 years. David serves as the assistant engineering officer. He knows machinery and the flow of water through pipes. He understands exactly how a ship stays on the surface. His knowledge will be vital for keeping a sub afloat. Training begins the moment they leave the coast. Every day, David drills his men on the ship's tail. They practice climbing over rails in rough conditions. They rehearse jumping from a whaleboat onto a deck. They memorize the layout of the Type 9 submarine. They use intelligence drawings to learn the interior. The challenges of the mission are truly staggering. A surfaced U-boat will likely be circling out of control. Its rudder would be jammed by heavy depth charges. The deck would be slick with oil and seawater. German sailors might still be inside with weapons. The boat could dive at any moment with men on top. The demolition charges are the most terrifying part. Captains order them armed as soon as they surface. They are designed to send the boat down in minutes. The crew also opens sea valves to flood the hull. David's team must work with incredible speed. They have less than 5 minutes to save the ship. They must find the charges and disarm them in the dark. They must navigate a maze of unfamiliar technology. Their tools are basic, wrenches and flashlights. There is no specialized gear for capturing a sub. Gallery holds conferences to coordinate the attack. They must use small guns to avoid sinking the prize. Aircraft are told to strafe only the conning tower. Pilots must avoid hitting the hole below the water. The goal is to wound the sub and drive out the crew. Pillsbury will be the first to lower her boarding party. Castleman positions his whaleboats for a fast start. David and his men wait for the signal to deploy. There is no guarantee that the plan will succeed. If they are too slow, they will die with the enemy. The task group sails toward the Cape Verde Islands. They search for periscopes in the vast shipping lanes. Days pass without any contact with the German fleet. The men continue to drill until they are exhausted. On June 4th, 1944, the group is off Cape Blanco. Gallery orders a change of course to head for fuel. Patrol seems over with no victory in sight. Then, at 11:09, the sonar operator hears a sound. USS Chatelaine reports a contact at 800 yards. Submarine is running deep toward the carrier. David's team has been training for 6 long weeks. Now, they have only minutes to fulfill their duty. Chatelaine turns hard and speeds toward the signal. 2 Wildcat fighters dive toward the churning sea. The pilots spot a dark shape beneath the surface. They fire their guns to mark the target for the ships. At 11:16, Chatelaine releases her first depth charges. Explosions send columns of white water into the air. Oil begins to bubble up from the dark depths below. The submarine has been hit and is in deep trouble. 6 minutes later, the U-boat breaks the surface. It comes up bow first, streaming salt water and oil. This is the U-505, scarred by rust and explosions. Her rudder is jammed, and she is circling in the sea. Seawater is pouring into her shattered engine room. German sailors scramble onto the deck to escape. Some try to reach the guns, but the Americans fire. Machine gun rounds spark off the cold steel tower. The German crew abandons the circling submarine. They throw up their hands and jump into the Atlantic. Castleman watches from the bridge of the Pillsbury. He gives the order to lower the boarding whaleboat. David and his 8 men drop into the small boat. The coxswain steers into the path of the circling sub. The U-boat is still moving at 5 or 6 knots. They must intercept it like a wounded wild animal. The whaleboat cuts inside the submarine's arc. The massive gray hull looms larger with every second. The water is thick with oil and thrashing sailors. David focuses only on the target ahead of him. The whaleboat pulls alongside the moving steel. David grabs a railing and pulls himself onto the deck. His men follow him onto the oil-slicked metal. The submarine rolls heavily beneath their feet. It is still circling and sinking by the stern. 1 dead German sailor lies near the main hatch.
Ow.
No other enemies are visible on the outside. David drops through the hatch into the dark control room. The interior is a scene of chaos and red light. Emergency lamps cast long shadows over the gear. Water sprays from broken pipes in the ceiling. The deck is tilted at a sharp, dangerous angle. David can hear the rush of water in the bilges. The Germans opened the valves before they left. He has very little time before the boat founders. His men spread out through the narrow compartments. 1 sailor finds the main sea strainer valve. The cover had been removed to flood the ship. He finds the lid and screws it back into place. The heavy flooding begins to slow down at last. Others search the dark corners for demolition charges. They find 13 explosives throughout the boat. Each one must be disarmed with steady, careful hands. Some timers are set to go off in a matter of moments. The team works in the dark, tracing wires and pipes. They pull out detonators and seal up the hatches. The submarine continues to settle lower in the stern. The aft deck is already disappearing under the water. Circling sub poses a danger to the Pillsbury. Castleman has to maneuver to avoid a massive collision. The whaleboat is crushed between the two steel hulls. 3 of Pillsbury's rooms flood from the heavy impact. Despite the crash, the boarding party stays aboard. They have stopped the scuttling and saved the hull. The U-505 is wounded but still on the surface. A second party arrives from the Guadalcanal soon. Commander Earl Trissino leads the second group. He finds David's men working in the flooded rooms. They have captured a German sub for the first time. Now, the new challenge is keeping it from sinking. Trissino crawls through the oily water for hours. He was an engineer before the war began in earnest. He has never seen the inside of a German boat. The Type 9 is larger and more complex than expected. The labels are in German, and the layout is foreign. Trissino traces the pipes by hand in the dark bilge. He learns the systems as the water continues to seep. The stern of the sub is still heavy and submerged. He identifies which pumps are still working. He creates connections to redirect the rising water. Slowly, the submarine begins to stabilize in the sea. David's team turns their focus to the intelligence. They find 2 Enigma machines fully intact. They gather codebooks and stacks of secret orders. They find charts showing every patrol zone in the sea. 900 pounds of secret documents are seized. This haul is a dream for the Allied codebreakers. Bletchley Park has been trying to crack these for years. The Germans change their settings on a regular basis. These books could unlock months of secret messages. They also find 2 acoustic homing torpedoes. These weapons track the sound of a ship's propeller. The Allies had only heard rumors of this technology. Now they could study them and build a defense. Captain Gallery faces a massive logistical problem. He has a captured sub 150 miles from the coast, cannot move under its own power at this time. And 3,000 sailors have just seen the whole thing. Secrecy is now the most important part of the mission. If Germany finds out, they will change their codes. All the captured intelligence would become useless. Gallery orders a total radio silence for the group. No mention of the capture is allowed in any logs. The 58 German prisoners are kept in total isolation. They are forbidden from speaking to any Americans. Gallery receives new orders from High Command. He is told to tow the sub to Bermuda, not Africa. It is a 2,500-mile journey across the open ocean.
Now the timing is critical because D-Day is approaching.
The invasion of Normandy is only days away. If codes are changed now, the invasion could fail. The secrecy must hold at any and all costs. Pillsbury tries to tow the sub but is too damaged. The carrier Guadalcanal takes over the heavy tow. The voyage to Bermuda takes 15 long days. Storms threaten to swamp the heavy flooded sub. Salvage crews stay aboard to pump out the water. Eventually a fleet tug takes over the towing duty. On June 19th, they enter Port Royal Bay, Bermuda. The U-505 is hidden in a remote corner of the base. She's repainted and renamed the USS Nemo. The German prisoners are sent to a camp in Louisiana. Their families are told they are missing at sea. They will not know the truth for several more years. Admiral Ernest King reviews the incredible haul. He knows Gallery took a massive risk with the codes. If the capture had leaked, the damage would be fatal. Gallery receives a medal, but also a stern warning. The secret must hold until the war is finally won. The German Navy never realizes what happened to her. Admiral Dönitz receives a final message on June 3rd. The sub reported it was returning to base in France. After that, there was only silence from the U-505. Dönitz assumed she was sunk by an aerial attack. He makes no changes to the German naval codes. The Enigma settings remain exactly the same. The American sailors keep their promise of silence. No letters home mention the capture of the sub. At Bletchley Park, the materials arrive quickly. The Enigma machine confirms their theories. The codebooks provide the settings for the summer. Gibberish messages suddenly become clear and plain. The intelligence reveals every U-boat position. Allied convoys are moved to avoid the wolf packs. Hunter-killer groups receive the exact coordinates. The Battle of the Atlantic is effectively won. The acoustic torpedoes are studied in Washington. Engineers learn exactly how the sensors work. They develop a noisemaker called a Foxer. The torpedoes chase the decoy instead of the ship. German captains are baffled by the sudden misses. Their best weapons are now failing to hit the mark. Dönitz never suspects that the U-505 was taken. He thinks the technology was salvaged from a wreck. The war continues into the fall of 1944. U-boat losses continue to climb at a high rate. New subs are equipped with snorkel technology. But the Allies already know where they are going. The Pillsbury returns to duty after her repairs. She rejoins Task Group 22.34 more patrols. The Central Atlantic becomes quiet and empty. German activity collapses under the pressure. By April 1945, the war is reaching its end. Allied armies are driving deep into Germany. Oh, but the U-boat war has one final dark chapter. A group of subs is sent on a desperate mission. They're equipped with the latest technology. They're sent to strike the American coastline. Pillsbury sails from Norfolk on April 8th. The mission to stop them is called Operation Teardrop. Teardrop was born from a fear of secret weapons. Rumors claimed subs carried V-1 or V-2 rockets. A strike on New York could kill thousands of people. The Navy assembled 2 barrier forces to stop them. Pillsbury is assigned to the protective screen. A net of ships is spread across the Atlantic approaches. For 2 weeks, they patrol through heavy fog. Sonar operators listen for any sign of the enemy. On April 16th, the barrier scores its first kills. 2 German submarines are sent to the bottom. 6 days later, a 3rd sub is destroyed by air. The barrier is working, but the threat remains. On April 24th, the USS Frederick C. Davis is hit. An acoustic torpedo breaks the ship in half. 115 American sailors die. It is the last American warship sunk in the Atlantic. The submarine responsible is the U-546. It fired at point-blank range and dove deep. Pillsbury is 12 miles away and races to help. 8 escorts converge to hunt the killer down. The hunt for the U-546 lasts for 10 hours. The sub dives to 600 feet to hide in the deep. The escorts spread out and probe with sonar beams. The German captain uses every trick to escape. Pillsbury circles the area while others attack. Depth charges and hedgehogs rain down on the sub. U-546 is forced deeper and deeper into the dark. By late afternoon, her batteries are nearly dead. Her air is foul and her crew is exhausted. She blows her tanks and breaks the surface at last. The escorts open fire with all their deck guns. U-546 fires to final torpedoes and misses. The German crew abandons the sinking ship. 33 survivors are pulled from the water. The captain is taken for immediate interrogation. The Navy must know if they carry rockets. The captain reveals there are no secret weapons. The mission was a final conventional gesture. The fear of a rocket attack was only a phantom. Operation Teardrop has successfully ended the threat. The remaining German subs surrender in May. The war in Europe finally comes to an end. Pillsbury has a record like no other ship. She helped destroy 2 subs and capture a 3rd. U-505 remains the only sub captured by Americans. The intelligence she provided saved countless lives. The Enigma hull protected the D-Day landings. The Navy recognizes the group with high honors. Task Group 22.3 receives a presidential citation. The boarding action is praised for its bravery. Albert David receives the Medal of Honor. It is the only one given in the Atlantic Theater. 2 of his men receive the Navy Cross. The rest of the party receives the Silver Star. Gallery receives the Legion of Merit for his vision. The secrecy of the capture finally comes to light. U-505 tours American ports for war bonds. The public is amazed by the secret story. Millions of dollars are raised for the war effort. The sub is later saved from being a gunnery target. Today, U-505 sits in a museum in Chicago. She is a monument to the men of the Pillsbury. Her steel holds the echoes of a daring boarding, a reminder of the day the Navy brought one back. The legacy of Task Group 22.3 lives on today. They proved that audacity can change history. From the depth charges to the Enigma machines. They fought the silent war, and they won. The ocean still holds the wrecks of the others. U-515 and U-546 lie in the dark silt. But U-505 remains above the waterline. It's preserved as a witness to the bravery of 1944. Castleman and David became heroes of the fleet. Their names are etched in the annals of naval lore. They stepped into the dark when the country asked, and they secured a victory that would never be forgotten. The Enigma machines changed the path of the war. The Foxer decoys ended the torpedo threat. Every part of the capture had a massive impact. The world was safer because of 8 brave men. The German sailors eventually went back home. They learned the truth of their capture in 1947. They were ghosts of a navy that no longer existed. But they were part of a story that would never die. The Pillsbury was eventually sold for scrap. Her deck is gone, but her spirit remains. She was the ship that refused to just sink them. She was the ship that brought the secrets home. The silence of the 3,000 sailors was legendary. They kept the secret to save their brothers, testament to the discipline of the greatest generation. The capture of U-505 remains a shining moment. As the sun sets over the Chicago Museum, the shadow of the sub stretches across the floor. Visitors walk the same narrow halls as Albert David. They see the valves that almost sank the ship. The wires that were pulled are still there. Enigma room stands silent and empty now. But the weight of history is heavy in the air. The U-505 is a ship that refused to disappear. Daniel Gallery's vision was finally realized. He saw the opportunity, and he took the risk. He changed the way the Navy thought about battle. He turned a sinking enemy into a lasting prize. The story of the Pillsbury is a story of grit. It is a story of pipes, valves, and courage. It is the story of how a small ship did big things, and how the Atlantic was won one boat at a time. The task group's coordination was the key. From the planes in the air to the men in the water, every piece of the machine worked together perfectly. We're a hunter-killer group in the truest sense. The German U-boat fleet was a formidable foe. The technical skill of their crews was unmatched. But the American resolve proved to be stronger. They adapted to the challenge and overcame it. The boarding of U-505 was a leap of faith, jumping onto a circling sub in high seas. The sheer physical danger was immense for the men, yet they didn't hesitate when the order came. Albert David's leadership was the foundation. He led from the front and went in first. His engineering mind saved the boat from sinking. He is a legend among those who sail the seas. The documents recovered were worth their weight in gold. Operational orders revealed the next Wolfpack moves. Charts showed the secret fueling points in the ocean. The German Navy was suddenly transparent to the world. The success of Operation Teardrop was a relief. The fear of rockets on New York was finally gone. The barrier forces proved that the coast was safe. The Navy had built an unbreakable wall of steel. The Frederick C. Davis is remembered every year. Her sacrifice was the final cost of the Atlantic War. She stood her ground and faced the torpedo. Her crew's bravery is part of the Pillsbury story. The U-546 interrogation was a vital moment. It proved that the war was truly nearing its end. The enemy was out of tricks and out of time. The phantom weapons were only a desperate dream. The surrender of the U-858 was a quiet affair. Pillsbury escorted her to the American shore, a final duty for a ship that had seen so much. The guns were finally silent across the waves. The Presidential Unit Citation is a rare honor. It sits in the archives as a mark of excellence. Task Group 22.3 earned every word of that praise. They were the best the Navy had to offer. The Medal of Honor is a heavy burden to carry. Albert David wore it with humble pride for his team. He knew he didn't do it alone on that deck. Every man in the whaleboat was a hero that day. The Silver Stars and Navy Crosses tell the tale. A group of regular men doing extraordinary things. There were radio men, engineers, and torpedo sailors. Became the borders of a new generation. The Bermuda Secrecy was a masterpiece of war. Tied a whole submarine for nearly a year. It required the cooperation of thousands of people. It is one of the greatest secrets of World War II. The Red Cross never knew about the prisoners. The 58 Germans lived in a bubble of silence. They were treated well, but they were invisible. The war required their disappearance for the greater good. The Enigma machine is a marvel of engineering, but the humans who captured it were even better. They outsmarted the scuttling crews in the sea. They brought the machine into the light of day. The Foxer decoys saved hundreds of escorts. The noisemakers were a simple but brilliant fix. They turned the Germans' best weapon into a joke. The Atlantic convoys owed their safety to the U-505. The transition to peace was a strange time. The Pillsbury was no longer needed for the hunt, but her name would live on in the history books. She was the little ship that could. Chicago's Museum of Science and Industry is her home. The U-505 was moved there in a massive operation. She traveled across the Great Lakes to her final spot. Thousands of people watched her arrive on the shore. The sub was pulled through the streets of the city, German predator in the heart of America. She was a trophy of war and a lesson in history. She stands there today, perfectly preserved for all. You can still see the damage from the depth charges. The scars of the battle are etched in her hull. The cramped bunks show how the sailors lived. The engine room smells of oil and old dreams. The boarding of the U-505 was a turning point. It showed that the U-boat could be conquered. It's not just destroyed, but mastered and taken. It was a psychological blow to the German high command. Dönitz never knew his codes were being read. He sent his men to their deaths in a clear sea. Thought it was bad luck or better radar. He never suspected the Americans had his books. The 900 pounds of documents were a gold mine. They contained settings for the entire year ahead. Allied planners could see the war from the enemy side. It was the ultimate advantage in a global conflict. The story of the ceramic was a dark motivation. The memory of the victims fueled the American fire. They wanted to stop the killers of the Atlantic. They did it with more than just explosives. The capture was a masterpiece of timing and luck. But it was mostly the result of Gallery's training. He had prepared his men for the exact scenario. When the moment came, they didn't have to think. The whaleboat coxswain was a master of his craft, steering a small boat against a giant, turning sub. The skill required to stay alongside was incredible. The ocean was trying to pull them under the steel. David's first steps onto the deck were historic. The first American to board an enemy sub in battle. He just knew he had to get inside immediately. The red lights of the control room were eerie. The sounds of the dying boat were all around him. He was standing in the heart of the enemy's machine, and he was determined to make it his own. The disarming of the 13 charges was a feat of nerves. One wrong move, and the whole thing would blow. Working in the dark with water at their knees, boarders were the bravest men in the fleet. The collision with the Pillsbury was a close call. The sub's hull was stronger than the escort's side. The flooding of the 3 compartments was dangerous, but the ship stayed afloat to finish the job. The tow back to Bermuda was a feat of seamanship. A carrier towing a waterlogged, heavy submarine. The lines snapped more than once in the rough seas, but they refused to let the prize go to the bottom. The repainting of the sub was a clever disguise. Renaming her the USS Nemo was a touch of humor. She was a ghost ship in a secret harbor, a symbol of the silent victory in the Atlantic. The 7th war bond drive was a huge success. The sub helped pay for the end of the war. The people of America saw what their money bought. A tangible piece of the victory over the Reich. Gallery's persistence saved the sub from the scrapyard. He fought the Navy bureaucracy to keep her alive. He knew she was too important to be sunk for target. He found her a home where she would be honored. The museum exhibit is a world-class experience. It takes you back to that June morning in 1944. You can hear the sonar pings and the rushing water. You can feel the tension of the boarding party. The legacy of Albert David is one of service. He didn't seek the fame or the medals he won. He just wanted to do his job and save his men. He represents the best of the American sailor. The U-505 is more than just a piece of metal. She is a container for the stories of 2 nations. The Germans who sailed her, and the Americans who took her. shared history in the middle of a terrible war. The acoustic torpedo technology was a game changer. Understanding the fox or decoys saved many lives. The science of the sea was changed by that capture. The Navy learned more in weeks than in years of war. The Enigma machine remains a symbol of secrecy. A complex device that was broken by simple bravery. The hardware was taken by men in a whaleboat. The software was broken by minds in a room. The Battle of the Atlantic was a battle of logistics. Keeping the supply lines open was the only way to win. The U-505 capture was the killing blow to the wolf packs. It turned the tide for good in the summer of '44. Operation Teardrop was the final exam for the Navy. The barrier forces proved they had mastered the sea. The hunt for the U-546 was a 10-hour masterclass. The destroyer escorts were the undisputed kings of the ocean. The loss of the Frederick C. Davis was a tragedy, but it spurred the hunt that ended the final threat. The men who died are honored by the victory that followed. Their names are part of the shield that protected the coast. The surrender of the remaining U-boats was a relief. The long, dark night of the Atlantic was over. The sailors could finally look at the horizon without fear. The war was won on the water and under it too. Pillsbury's record is a source of pride: 2 sinkings and 1 capture in 13 months. She punched far above her weight class in the war. Small ship with a massive historic shadow. The Presidential Unit citation hangs in the museum. A testament to the teamwork of the hunter-killer group. They were a family of ships that worked as one, and they achieved the impossible together. Albert David died shortly after the war ended. He never got to see the sub in its Chicago home, but his spirit is in every bolt of that ship. He is the eternal guardian of the U-505. The 58 German sailors went on to live long lives. They remembered the day the Americans came aboard, the day their secret war ended in a whaleboat. They were witnesses to a unique moment in time. The U-505 is a bridge between the past and now, a place where we can learn about the cost of freedom. The narrow halls remind us of the bravery required to step into the dark and bring back the light. The story of the capture will be told for centuries. A tale of audacity, engineering, and total secrecy. The day the U.S. Navy reached back into its history to take a prize that would help win the world. As you look at the sub in the museum today, remember the men of the Pillsbury and the Guadalcanal. Remember the 10 minutes that changed the entire war. Remember the day they brought one back alive.